Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on matters of interest to the school community. Individuals wishing to speak must state their name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes duration, but an individual may speak a second time after all others who wish to speak on the topic have been heard. All statements should be directed to the board president, and no participant may address or question board members individually. All speakers are requested to express themselves in a civil manner, with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others whose legal rights may be affected. Please note, while it is not the board's intention to stifle comment on matters of legitimate concern, the public should be aware that if their statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, they may face personal liability to the injured party. If speakers are uncertain of the legal ramifications of their comments, the board urges them to seek guidance beforehand from their own legal advisor. So if you want to come to the podium one at a time.
Mine's super quick. Sarah Flood. Really quick question. I know you touched on 2nd, 5th, 8th, 12th. I have 4th graders and 5th graders. So in regards to 4th grade, what should I expect?
It'll hit them at the end of 5th because we're going across the span. We pushed it all to the furthest length we could go.
Okay, so for 4th grade, nothing will change.
No, but also you can look at the standards too. If you see something you want, it would be the same opt-out procedure.
Okay,
so,
great,
yeah,
thank you.
Yes, because that letter will go home to each principal. That'll be sent home to each individual family.
Okay, great.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Diana Garfinkel. I'm new to Matawan. My kids are going into Ravine. I have 7-year-old twins entering the public school system for the first time here. Really, my 2 questions focus around the opt-out process. So what specifically, I guess first question and second, 2 questions only. First question is, during these lessons regarding health, touching upon the terminology for private parts, which I think is appropriate to know for all kids, when they're having those conversations, are they having them 1 hour during a week? Are they scheduled for every Friday? How do the parents know when is this coming? How often will it be? And how much of the day does it take? And just secondly, if I choose to opt out, where does my child go? Are they being asked to leave the classroom in front of all of the other kids? Are they going to do some recess? How does that process work so they don't feel both left out and singled out? And how am I sure when is this happening and how often?
So to answer your first, you'd be opting out of specific standards. Okay. So that opt-out letter will come home. It'll list all of the standards that are being taught, and in the beginning I spoke about when they're going to be taught. We're talking about this will all take place in a health and phys ed class in a 40-minute period.
Once a week, once a month?
It will depend on age level and things like that, which will be,
grade.
yes,
Yep.
So it's going to be, yes, exactly, a very, very small piece of a much larger piece to the puzzle, of a much bigger puzzle, excuse me. So the answer where they will go will depend, because if you opt out of the standard, let's say in 2nd grade, naming penis, vagina, I have to get you out of the classroom because otherwise you're going to hear it, right? So there will be alternative assignments set up, and we will have a staff member will be, so it could be going to the library that period, but we're not going to sit kids in a corner and say, this is where, that's not what this is about, right? We're here for kids at the end of the day, so it will be as unobtrusive as possible.
Okay, so in other words, once I get the letter from the principal and I say, these are the standards I don't want my children to participate in,
right.
There will be pre-planning,
Yes.
My children will be taken to do something else during that time,
Yes.
Brought back into the classroom and continue on.
Exactly, and we're not talking about a large piece of time.
Okay.
And also, to that end, you would, if you have questions, you would go to your principal first. If you're not hearing what you need to hear or there's confusion, then I would ask to call me.
And then last question, you mentioned the 4 words, which I do think are appropriate in
Yes.
2nd grade, toward the end of 2nd grade.
Yes.
How much freedom does the teacher have? And this is just by...
Those are 4 words, like I said.
4 words.
Yes.
So if a little Johnny or little Sally, as you said, raised their hand and said, well, I know this word.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, that's going to happen.
Right.
But we have a professional staff here that this is what they do for a living.
Right.
So what I'm telling you is those are the 4 words.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Sarah Gershner. I'm going into ninth grade here at the high school. And with today's current events and what's going on currently in our country, I feel though it's very important to discuss abortion and what's going on. So would abortion be implemented into the curriculum?
There's discussions in high school on that, yes. Yep.
And would
Which has always been, yes.
And would there be discussion how there's limited legalities with abortion in certain states?
That doesn't exist in New Jersey right now.
Oh, I understand, but
She's asking about other states.
in other states, I'm aware of New Jersey.
Let her repeat. Can you repeat your question?
Would we be taught about the legalities and illegalities of abortion nationwide?
Yeah, so if you were in a history class in high school, that topic would come up, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Legal Warranty Aberdeen. I was just going to piggyback off of that. That's probably a history lesson or a current events or a, that type of English maybe. Definitely the AP level classes that they do at the high school, but shouldn't be, and I hope it's not part of the sex ed curriculum, the legal or illegal. Thank you. With respect to the puberty lessons, will there be any touching on that sometimes puberty is uncomfortable and it doesn't, have to feel great all the time? It's something everybody has to work through. We've all done it. Will that be part of that discussion?
Absolutely, and just remember, the puberty discussion is not coming in second grade, right? So, yes, absolutely.
As far as respect, I'm all for it, and that includes self-respect. So making sure that, girls, especially girls, are taught that you don't have to go along with what everybody's doing. You can respect yourself and your desires and your wishes and your, what you want to consent to and all that stuff.
I would argue it has to start with yourself, right? Before it can go anywhere else. So, yes. Yep.
Okay. And then I had a question about when kids ask questions, but I do feel that the educators in this district are able. I've been through this with Santa Claus. They were great about the Santa Claus question in the younger grades. The teachers handled it perfectly, so I feel like I'm very confident how they'll steer kids away from veering off into other subjects. And then I saw that for the high school pregnancy portion, abstinence was listed as one of actually the first preventions for both disease and pregnancy, so I really appreciate that because somehow that's getting lost in all of this. I know that we're talking about family culture as well in some of this, and that's part of a lot of families' cultures. I've been talking to my kids about this stuff. I'm not squeamish about it for a long time, probably before they'll be exposed to it in these classes. My kids are older now. Had a daughter that graduated last year, my son's a senior this year. So, they're pretty clear about how I feel. And I think lastly, what I would say is that I would love a parental involvement piece. Somebody talked about, resources at home. I think that parents are squeamish. At the same time, they don't want the schools to teach things because it may not match up with their values. So I know that we have the Parent Academy. I think it might be a good idea to have something where parents are kind of taught how to expand on these discussions in their homes so that they can infuse their own ideas about what they feel is right. And kids get everything from everywhere. So it's not like the parents are going to brainwash them into thinking their way, right? I have two kids. I know that's not how it works. But I think it's a good idea to open that discussion for parents who want to.
And Ms. Warnecki, I agree with you 100%. That's been discussed on the table right now, and there's a couple of things I want to get rolling within the first 2 weeks of school, and that is one of them. Yep, you're welcome.
I'm Chase Galvanis, I live in the Stratford section. So my oldest is going to second grade, and just reading that, I had a couple questions. Obviously, good stuff, learning about the body parts, learning about prevention. We've all touched on that, my opinion, that course. But the hard questions, my daughter will be taught about reproduction, correct? Second grade towards the end, is that correct?
Not to the, Michael, do you want to?
Not reproduction of humans, but reproduction of
Just
Animals and plants.
Okay. At that point, will they be taught that females give birth or mothers give birth and that males provide the seed, or will that just be just
It's not that in-depth.
not that much? Okay. And then 5th grade, just reading the slides, I saw most boys have penises and most girls have vaginas.
That's part of the standard.
Okay.
So, like I said,
But by most, I mean, is it like a disformity, or is it just going along the gender identity?
I don't, well, then that's where you should go look at the legislative notes
Okay.
and see what their intent was when they wrote it.
How are we going to address that?
Yes.
Just that males and females reproduce, yes, so,
Okay.
yes.
And then at that point in reproduction, will be taught that only females can have pregnancy or can give birth?
I don't even think we go into that depth until high school,
So that'd be 8th grade?
yes, but
Okay.
I will verify that for you. If you send me an email in the morning,
Okay.
I will check tomorrow.
So, just to be clear, it would be taught that females are the only ones that can give birth?
Well, let me go through everything.
Okay.
But I have to differentiate between the state standard.
No, because the only reason I heard that there's science that we're going along and
If
the quote you said
you're
that's
asking me if
what's
we're going to
on
be
the fly.
putting emojis of men with a big belly, no, the answer is
No, I'm talking specifically
All
that
right.
females.
I'll get the answer for you. Just
Okay.
send me an email. So it's in my head, but just send me an email in the
The
morning.
only reason I asked because your quote was adjustments on the fly, so I don't know if that would be an adjustment on the
Oh,
fly.
no.
Okay.
I'm talking about equity, not, yes, not the how-tos.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
My name is Ruben from Northern Lane. I'm new to the Matawan Aberdeen area. I will have 3 kids coming to the school next year, ranging from 2nd grade, 5th grade, and high school. So I will run the gamut of kids taking this curriculum.
We have a lot of welcomes to do tonight.
With that, I just want to stand up here to thank all of you because A, this is a thankless job that y'all are doing. It is not easy to sit there and come up with a curriculum of such a sensitive topic and the care that you have put into it with the legislation that's hanging over your head is absolutely amazing. And in a world today of catchphrase calls and buzzword betties and headline heroes, to hear you break down what you are going to do to educate our children, to create equality among everybody in the school is absolutely amazing. My 5th grader is a transgender female. She already started questioning her identity at the age of 8. My eldest is a non-binary female, and these are topics that, whether we want to admit or not, are coming up in social media, on TikTok, it's coming up in Fortnite, in video games that they play, whether we want to admit it or not. And my 9-year-old came to their summer camp this year from Brooklyn and openly identified as being a transgender female and was accepted. Made me feel really great about being in this community. They did not want to do that in Brooklyn, but they did it here. And to continue that, I know it's hard for all of us to admit that teachers are going to teach our kids stuff that we may not totally feel comfortable with, but school is the gateway to education. It's the gateway to opening up conversation at home. All of you are opening up the conversation for us, for our kids to ask questions to us, to go in depth how we feel personally at home. And I thank you for doing that.
You're welcome, and welcome.
SEGIS was formed, SEGIS was a sexual education.
I'm sorry, can I get your name and address?
Sean Otterbein, I live in Cliff Beach, Short Concourse. The Sexual Education Information Council of the United States was formed in 1964 to lower pregnancy rates and STD rates, right, among teens. And between 1957 and 1964, they had already been going down. But after SEGIS was formed and they became more influential, the pregnancy rates and STD rates skyrocketed, went through the roof. So the comprehensive sex education didn't work to fulfill its goals. And they presented studies to say that it would, and it ended up not working out. So my parents and our parents and grandparents, who trusted the studies over their own common sense that sexualizing teenagers was going to lead to higher rates of pregnancy and STDs, they were wrong to disregard their own common sense for the studies. And now you're telling us that these studies are going, that if we take that sexualization of teens and we start very slowly at 7 or 8 years old, and then we move up to when they're around 11 years old, that's going to make them less likely to be attracted to sexual predators. Now, we're supposed to leave these studies over common sense, which is, the common sense is if 7-year-olds are more comfortable talking about their sexual anatomy, that's a dream come true for sexual predators. And you're saying some sexual predators would be averse to that, and the term some is vague. What is some? 2, 3? Because you're not even saying many. You're not giving any percentages. So I don't trust this program because it never worked before. It hasn't worked. It's been decades. Pregnancy rates going crazy, and you're having all these problems. You're not fixing them, and now you're wanting to expand these programs to include 7-year-olds. There's something wrong with you people. There's something wrong with you pushing this kind of sexualization of children. I'm going to opt out. I hope all the parents opt out because you're sick people and you're doing something horrible to these kids. You've already did it to us. We're the recipients. We're the guinea pigs for this experiment. And you see where society has gone now. You see what's going on with pregnancy, with marriages, with destroyed relationships between men and women. And you just want to keep expanding. You're ignoring the failures of your program. You're ignoring the fact that you have absolutely, utterly failed to lower pregnancy rates or to lower STD rates. God help us all. God help us all, man. That's all I have to say.
My name is Abby Berg. I live in Mattawan, and I grew up here. I grew up in the D section. I didn't go to school here, but I've been in this town, and I'm raising my kids in this town. And I have to say, this is probably the first time, and anyone who knows who I am or sees me online or here, I actually agree with everything you guys said, except for one thing. And as a parent of a child who is in the LGBTQ community, one, possibly two, I am really glad that you guys are opening up this discussion because I feel like some people are really uncomfortable talking about this with their kids. I am both mother and father to my children, so I got to have the sex talk with my 13 and 14-year-old boys. That was not fun, okay? But what I will say is that a lot of the stuff that I told them, like, oh, we already know that, Mom, we learned that in school. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have to talk about this. This is like, I came from a very strict Jewish religious family. My parents built the synagogue on Lloyd Road. They were one of the founding members of the synagogue. We've been here over 40 years. And I just want to say that I'm really glad that you guys are dealing with this. My oldest child, too, is in the LGBTQ plus community, was terribly bullied at Lloyd Road that a lot of people on the board know, people in the community know. And I'm just really glad that you guys are able to talk about it and in appropriate ways. And as someone who was in a high school whose principal went to jail for molesting the children in a school where we didn't talk about anything, in a community that we were so closed-mouthed, yeah, he went to jail for molesting the kids in my grade. Thank goodness my parents had the conversations with me so we understood, right? But I didn't learn about that in school. We didn't know. I didn't, the way I was raised was very different than the world that I was thrown into. And while the community members may not agree with, non-binary or, people who are, identifying different, then that's fine. You don't have to identify with them. But you also have to understand that you don't have to do anything. But I would hope that the people in this community that I grew up in and I decided to stay here and literally eat like ramen, afford to live here, that the people in this community would be a little bit more open and accepting of other people. And that's the one thing. And the other question I had was, which has nothing to do with the sex ed, why did the board decide not to teach CRT? Because that was like one of the first things you guys had on there. We are not teaching CRT. I'm curious as to why that choice was made.
Yeah, why? Because we collectively decided that wasn't a route we wanted to go.
Are we going to discuss any of the ideas behind that, which very possibly might have root in this country? Just out of curiosity.
Well, as we spoke about before, that could be an AP class at the high school level and things like that, but to have a complete understanding of that, you know, the reasoning behind it is those courses are college level courses that somehow morphed into a whole other thing in the last 3 years. So to try to teach something that's at a college level is almost impossible to do at these ages. So you might find a discussion on that in an AP class in high school. A senior could possibly do their capstone project for a graduation requirement on that if they chose. So that's the reasoning behind that.
Will there ever be discussions with our kids about how race and laws are in our country? Like how, like a real conversation, not like, oh, well, there's a civil rights movement, so everyone's happy.
Yeah,
those real conversation about it.
At that high school AP, those conversations are happening all over the place, yes.
And we start at high school?
Yeah.
If I could just follow up, I guess. We are teaching history, right? And the race relations, for example, there is an equity team made up of kids where that was very blatantly discussed in an equity team conversation that was initiated by kids. And I was looking for her because she was here. But there she is, sorry, I'm staring right at you. So it's something that, regardless of what we did, our children took it on and had absolutely gone with the ball. But this district teaches history, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Hello, my name is Malin and I live in the Strathmore section as well. First, I want to say thank you for what you guys are doing. This is, I'm sure, a learning curve, not only for us, but for you guys as well, trying to figure out a way to make pretty much everyone happy. I think it's very important for children, even at a young age. I do it with my kids. What is safe? What's a safe touch area? You know, and not only for strangers. It's unfortunate to say, but most of the time when something happens, it's within family members, it's friends. So I just want to make sure that it's just not being taught as a stranger situation, because this is usually not the case.
Oh, that was a bit out of context. No, of course, yes, and you are correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So thank you for doing that. I think it's extremely important, and it will definitely protect a lot of children. Secondly, I feel, at least when it comes to the binary, non-binary, we're learning, right? So I think maybe it would be smart to maybe connect with different parents and hear their stories and kind of learn, because this is a learning curve for us as well as parents. And I think maybe that's something that maybe should be formed within us, or I don't know how to do that.
Well, we were talking about the parent university before might be a way,
Okay.
or we could form a separate committee as well. So the answer to that is it's whatever we want it to be, right, at the end of the day. So call me up. I know there's people in here that want to get this ball rolling in some whatever avenue you want to go down, and we need to be respectful of all of that. So.
But I also want to state that if anyone has a comment or an idea or a question, that everyone should be open to it and not take it as insult, because that's the only way we're going to learn, not just by squashing, saying you can't say anything because your opinion does not match mine. We have to figure
Agreed.
out a middle ground.
And equity, right?
Exactly.
That's equity. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Hi everyone, Cindy Santora. I'm from Lloyd Road. I've spoken several times. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I did do the opt-out program last year for 5th grade. I did speak to Dr. Micah and Mr. Bombardier, I think his name was, and I mentioned I had a lot of concerns. So I sent in my letter, said my daughter was not going to participate, and the principal of Lloyd Road did reach out to me. He was wonderful. And then he said to me, I'm going to send you all the PowerPoints and everything. He said that the 2020 controversial stuff wasn't in it yet. So he sent it to me, I read it, and I was like, okay, I'm okay with it. But I will let you know that the pullout process was not private. It was kind of like announced, and my daughter said when she was leaving, all the kids went, ooh, Addie's in trouble. So that is definitely something that should be discussed.
And we spoke about that, you and
No, I'm just saying, like,
no,
that.
what I'm saying is I hear everybody, and
Mhm.
that, I have 2 days of PD with my admin next week. You can rest assured that that is going to be discussed until it doesn't need to be discussed.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you very much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good evening, my name is Terry McGovern, I'm from Wilson Avenue here in Aberdeen, a nice little town that I moved into. You guys did a fantastic job dancing around the language of the rules. I appreciate that. But that's the scary part. When you were asked when men can have babies, you got very quiet up there, okay? Now this is the part of the curriculum that I'm not so thrilled about, because people identify as this, that, and the other thing. And if you don't get the pronoun right, those children are going to be punished. This isn't right. The other question I have is about the bathrooms. Is this group going to let men go into the women's room? I don't hear anybody saying anything about this, because this is usually the next step in this agenda. That's language that you showed on the board. I appreciate that you guys dance around that language, but I'm appalled that nobody has the nerve to say that men can't get pregnant, that they can get pregnant. What gives? So you're, in one sense, you're a fraud, and I can't believe everything. What do you call it, the opt-out? Are these going to be grouped in for a lesson, or are they going to be individual? And the other thing was, the woman who was just up here, she made a very valid point about children who are opted out. They're going to be ridiculed for being opted out. Has to be discretionary. Are kids going to be punished for misgendering other persons in their classroom? I'd like that question answered.
You said the word punish twice. I've never said punish in my life. We're not here to punish people. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, I'm just saying, will there be...
I'm just saying, we're not here to punish people.
Any,
No, the answer is no.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, I just find it astounding that you can't understand the language that's before you and disagree with it publicly. I'm ashamed of that for you.
Thank you.
Is there sorry, do you mind if I just ask if anybody else, before someone comes back up to the podium? Any new voices?
Terry. One gentleman said school is a gateway to education. And I'm wondering what happened to reading, writing, and arithmetic. You've got all these other countries that are way over the top with academics than the United States. Because we're not teaching the things our kids need to learn to get ahead. You're teaching sex too early. You're supposed to be taught in kindergarten to be nice to everybody. So why do you have to bring all these different groups in? Just be nice to people. Say please and thank you. Be nice. And for abortion to be taught, I can tell you right now, I'm Christian. I don't believe in abortion. People want to believe in that. That's, their beliefs. But I'm totally going to opt out. I don't think these things, they're indoctrinating our children in schools. The parents should have the job of raising their children, not the schools, not with the sex, not with pregnancy and all that kind of stuff. It's up to the parents to teach them. So I think when they're in kindergarten and they do learn this. Be nice to all the kids. What's wrong with that? Why do you have to bring all this sex stuff in? And one more point, I did speak to you on the phone about metal detectors in the schools. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
They had, like I said, they had them in Elizabeth, New Jersey in the 80s, and they worked fine. They had them in the courts, they had them in the airports, so if anybody's concerned about safety, I would consider everybody discussing metal detectors, plain and simple.
So we're going to be forming a committee as soon as school starts on safety, because we're in talks with both townships now about getting class 3 officers in every building. So that may be in a committee you'd like to serve on.
Okay.
And you can bring that to the table with the committee.
I
So
appreciate it.
if you send me an email in the morning, I will assure you that in the first week of school, I'll be sending an email out about that. So I will ensure that you'll be on that chain.
And you did email me right back.
I did.
Call me, and I do appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Can I just say something? In terms of the education, we are still doing the reading, the writing, the math, like all of that education is definitely still happening and is a priority, but there is a portion that will be dedicated to this, but it's a small, in fact, Mike was saying earlier, it's a small portion that will be dedicated to this too, because I hate to, while I would love to say everybody learn to be nice in kindergarten, you do learn it, you learn it in preschool. I mean, you learn don't cut the line. I mean, we've got adults, so you learn a lot when you're little, but unfortunately, things change, and there's a lot out there, and the kids are exposed to so much. I mean, I've got middle schoolers and high schoolers, and
I know our daughters go to school together.
yeah, so I mean, if some parents even knew what their kids were doing, looking at, I mean, there needs to be some education to keep the kids safe, and I do feel strongly it needs to happen, and I wish I could say that bullying and harassment doesn't happen, but it does. We see the HIP reports.
Yeah, I know my daughter's been bullied, so.
So I think, I wish kids were all nice. I wish all adults were nice. It's just, unfortunately, I think it's constant that we have to keep that communication going and teaching them self-respect, respecting others, accepting others. So I think that has to continue beyond kindergarten.
It should be up to the parents with the sex. And also, like I said, it goes against a lot of people's religions about a lot of things. I can respect anybody here. I was taught to respect people, but I don't believe in a lot of this stuff. And I don't think a lot of it should be taught. That's, and we'll be off to now. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, kind of, I think I know the answer, but just to be clear, we talked about a lot of new standards, new information. We are not actually spending any more time on health class than we ever have, correct? I mean, I don't believe so. Okay. Just checking.
Mrs. Scully, I just want to verify, Dr. Michael, we're not discussing pronouns anywhere, are we?
No.
Is that anywhere?
No, but if someone identifies as one, as a different pronoun, that's different than...
Right, but we're not, it's not actually in the
No.
standards and
No.
or the curriculum.
No.
That to me falls under, accepting type of thing, right? Okay.
It's like, as we've been talking about equity law, yes,
Right.
to that end.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you because I didn't say that before. I think that, it was suggested that you danced around the standards. I actually see that in a positive way because there's a lot of districts that are going completely full force with this, and we're really lucky. I feel lucky that there was so much thought put into this and so much care about really trying to make sure that it was handled so that, the majority of the people would be okay with it. I apologize for people who think that's sick, and I'm sorry about that. I personally am. And I want to remind everybody that these are the standards that our Board of Education, our teachers, our curriculum department was given. And they came up with something that I think is pretty tame. I watch all the stuff you guys watch. I know what's out there. So just keep that in mind, and I would encourage people to go back and look at the 2nd grade and the 5th grade. you can get caught up in what's out there. So just let's focus on our community, what's been presented here, what's available for us to look at, reinforcing at home your personal beliefs, opening up that conversation, and writing to your legislators, because this came from the legislation. And, I don't necessarily agree with everything, but I'm not going to get mad at these people about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lemon. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I was up here before, if you don't remember, my name's Sarah. And I wanted to talk about, why are we not discussing pronouns? Because with people in today's world being transgender and gay, we need to talk about pronouns so it's not a taboo subject.
I think I was misunderstood when I spoke. The discussions about pronouns will take place. They're not written down anymore. And we've spoken before. The focus is on equity, right? Making everyone feel accepted. So in that discussion, yeah, the answer to that is yes. But it's not going to be, as I said before, a how-to, right? You need to call yourself it. That's not going to take place, right? Because that's not a staff member telling someone that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the equity of the acceptance. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
I hope that clarified for you.
Yes, and I also have one other thing. With everyone's children's access to the internet these days, you can find out anything with the touch of your finger. Why aren't we talking about critical race theory? Because during Black Lives Matter, everyone, you turn on the TV, you turn on the news, you find out about lynchings, you find out about people's deaths by police officers.
We're talking, those things are discussed in history class. The term critical race theory itself is a college level course that's taught at universities. We're merely breaking it down in the history portion and discussing all of those things, lynchings, the civil rights movement in the 90s, all of that's being discussed. But the term critical race theory is a college level university program. That's what I'm talking about. But those discussions are being had in history classes, starting in the middle school.
As you mentioned, critical race theory itself was really only introduced into AP classes. But don't you think it's important, because it's our education as students to learn about everything that's going on in our world, that we will be the leaders of in the future?
My answer to that is yes, but if I'm talking specifically about the term critical race theory, it goes to that college level. So some subjects under critical race theory, they are being discussed in our classrooms, yes. I think I'm missing something here. Maybe we can have a side conversation.
I would love to.
Come in for lunch, because I'm just telling you the way I'm processing what you're saying to me.
Yeah,
So,
I think a further discussion would be necessary
So-
in this situation.
all right.
If I could just, I guess, maybe follow up with.
Send me an email tomorrow.
Of course.
Thanks.
If I'm correct, just going through school as I have, critical race theory involves a lot of philosophy as well as history, which is normally above the ken of your average student. That doesn't mean to say that's all students, but that's why with things like the Equity Club, when you start those discussions, and the more people we can all get there, that's where a lot of that, you can vet out those kids and adults, where that it's at their ken, but there is an awful lot of philosophy that goes along with it that a 40-minute high school class could never do justice. At least that's fine. I'm not an educator, I don't pretend to be, but I was a philosophy major.
And speaking of the equity team, it would be very helpful if all of you members on the board to help with our cause. And as well as helping with our cause, that means when children are the ages about, let's say, not age, but grades kindergarten through 5th grade, that's when you're a sponge, technically. You absorb information. So therefore, we should be teaching things about transgender, gay, and how it's fine, it's totally okay. So therefore, we should be accepting it and teaching it so it's not a taboo subject. Thank you.
I'm Alexis Legacy, another one. I am frozen solid. It is way too cold in here. I don't know why. So if I'm not eloquent, I'm going to work through it.
It's feast or famine because on any given day, it could be the opposite conversation. So I'll take that as a positive.
So I do want to thank everyone on the board for this presentation. I am in full support of the curriculum. I think the only missed opportunity is that it does seem that a lot was done to proactively appease a very small number of people. And I think that might be a missed opportunity, that you have the opt-out available to parents. And I think if people do not agree, they can opt out and they can, take care of their children that way rather than limiting, I'm like shaking, limiting the opportunities for all children. I also just want to say I cannot wait for your lunch with Sarah. She's amazing, and I ditto every comment that she has made.
And Sarah is amazing, and we will have a nice lunch. Won't we, Sarah?
Yes. And I also just wanted to reiterate the comments that were made about gender, and at one point there were some comments made up here that I interpreted as transphobic, and I really hope that the board is, I'm sorry.
Were you referring to the board as?
No. It did seem that there may have been some answers that were made that were not clearly thought out to the transphobic remarks that were made from the audience. So I did just want to give you maybe an opportunity to clarify that.
Well, I think I've been all night long discussing equity. I can't say that enough. That's a word I use often, and I don't use it lightly. Yep.
And I appreciate
Yep.
it. And just one small minor thing to note, I would love for all the equity to bleed over into the school's dress codes.
Sorry, I'm new, so I have more questions. Regarding bathrooms, that question was not answered. As I mentioned, my kids are going to Ravine. Ravine, I believe, is until the 3rd grade. With the bathroom situation, what is the policy?
There is a male bathroom, a female bathroom, and a unisex bathroom.
Awesome.
Yep.
And then regarding the pronouns, I don't think the answer was very clear, so I understand that in the
Pronouns are accepted, and they will be done with equity. And
absolutely.
If a discussion in class needs to take place to explain it, it will take place.
So I guess my question would be, how is it explained at the discretion of the teacher?
I think that would be fair to say based off of the current situation within that classroom. So I don't want to sit here and presuppose anything because we have to wait till it happens, right?
Right, but I'm assuming that all teachers,
yes,
there's a standard.
Absolutely. No question about it, yes. Yep.
So the reason I ask is I have no problem with anyone's preference, choice, gender, identity, but it is my choice to teach my children what my family and I believe in, and it's not a fear, but my concern would be that if my kids are in the 2nd grade, which they will be, and there is a child who is transgendered or who has transgendered parents, perfectly fine, that is their choice, and that child brings it up in a conversation, my question would be, is there a standard or is there a limit on how the teacher can respond in a classroom setting without intervening with their own opinions, right? Because
there are no opinions. We're not talking. There are no opinions here.
In the curriculum, there's no opinions, but when there's an open discussion with young children and things may come up, right, there are opinions of the adults in the room.
The discussions will not be centered around opinions, and if that happens, I need to know.
Well, how would I know if that happens?
Well, I'm sure your son or daughter
7-year-old
will go home and tell you, right?
You'd be, go ahead.
My kid.
You go ahead.
No, I guess what I'm saying is that everyone raises kids differently. My kids are pretty sheltered. We're also from New York. We come from a very diverse place. We're immigrants. I get all of it. I have nothing against anyone, but we're teaching our children certain things, and my concern would be that when there is that situation, when someone raises their hand, asks a question, and a conversation ensues, I don't know what the teacher will say, and I don't know if there is a, I don't want to say cut the conversation off, no, kids should express themselves, but is there a standard by which the teachers in this district?
Yeah, the answer to that, the long and short answer to that is yes. And we also have 2 days of PD before school starts, and these standards are going to be a topic of discussion during that time as well.
And if I do have a concern with
and I'm
how...
hearing everything everybody's saying tonight, and I'm taking notes, and I will address everything that I need to address.
So if my child does come home and does tell me and I don't feel that it's appropriate, I can reach out to you and say that?
Absolutely. Any time of the day, any day of the week. Yep.
Mrs. Foley, can I just comment on that? I actually asked the exact same question because while we don't want kids to not ask questions, I said to Jay that, the staff is in a hard situation because how do you have a conversation but yet know when to stop? But yet not to stop the child, but to get them to a person who can maybe discuss that more with them. So I don't envy them in that, because especially the little guys, they want to talk and they ask questions. So Dr. Mike, I know you had said that the staff would be advised on how to handling that and...
Yes. And so,
thank you, I appreciate it.
And if not, you're going to call me up.
Can I just throw one other thing out there? It's my understanding we're going to have administrators actually from Central in each building so that teachers will have a resource.
Yes. So another thing that we changed, we did a little reorg of central office, and we will have a member of central office have an office in every building as well moving forward.
And what do we...
Well, central, as opposed to the building principal, central administration administrates the whole district. So our directors are going to be pushed into buildings, so they have an office in the building. I think it's very, very important, especially coming off being distant for the last 2 years with COVID. It's very important that people get back into buildings and start reestablishing those relationships. And those people from Central have intimate knowledge of all of our curriculum and things like that. So not only will they be doing their job, there'll be a support for that individual building that they're in. Yeah.
Hi, Abby Berg, Madawan. Coming back after listening to a lot of what people are saying, I'm actually pretty glad, again, that you guys are doing this, because from my personal experience, I came from a family where a man marries a woman, and that's it, right? That's how I grew up, and that's how I was raised. And it was hard for me when my child told me that they were not following the same path that I was following, or that I thought maybe that was the correct path. It was a hard discussion, and it was an uncomfortable discussion, and it was a hard realization that no matter what I want for my kids, they're gonna do what they wanna do and feel who they wanna feel. I'm lucky. I was born a girl, I feel like a girl, I only date men. Easy, right? It is not an easy place for these kids to even admit where they're at or to talk about it. And I'm just so glad that you guys are opening up these conversations and allowing it, because it is clear that there are a lot of families that are maybe not as comfortable or as accepting with these topics. And it might be difficult for when those kids come into the classroom or they see someone that's different, for them to not say, you're wrong, and spew out whatever a parent is saying. And I'm not saying what the parents are telling their kids is wrong, because that's how you want to raise your kids. But we have to understand that this is public school, right? Lots of different people here. And for the parents that are concerned about the teachers, I've always been a little critical. I mean, anyone who knows me, I'm critical. I'll tell you if I don't like the way something is, if the teacher doesn't. Me and Dr. Micah and Ms. Perez are like on Thursday basis. They will be on every third email that I have. As soon as someone tells me something, I'm like, oh, no, fix this, fix it. And they do. I think that it's difficult to change the way we were brought up and the way we think, but if you don't like what they're teaching here, then there's lots of other schools. And I'm a little it like almost baffled my mind that Dr. Mike had to constantly say, like, this is not a how-to, right? Like, I don't know, like, I haven't always loved our teachers, but I'm pretty sure none of them are teaching our kids inappropriate things. And if you think that our teachers are teaching our kids things that are that inappropriate, your problem is really with the individual, not with the district, personal opinion. I mean, I lived next door to the gym teacher, the fourth and fifth grade gym teacher for 10 plus years. And I can say with all confidence in my heart that the fourth and fifth grade gym teacher is not going to be inappropriate with our kids, okay? But the problem is that if you're not teaching it at home, which happens, if you don't think that your kids know about this stuff, I have a 9, 10-year-old, and let me tell you something, me and her had a hell of a conversation 3 days ago about something that she saw online that I was like, what? And I'm pretty strict about what I have them online. I'm a laid-back hippie, but on the other hand, I'm super strict, you know what I mean? Like I'm in that weird in-between place, right? But they know, if you don't think that your kids on the bus are getting a heck of an education that about pronouns, about gender, about people who can have children, whether we personally agree with it or not, it's a conversation that has to be had. And rather than, I think, fighting about it, it's a great place to start with your kids about how this is how some people live their lives, but this is how we live our lives, and it's not bad per se, but like that's where I think a lot of these problems are coming, is because we're not having open conversations, whether we agree with them or not. So I just want to say thank you because, like I said, as a parent, mom and dad both, I got to hit both sides. And I had to learn about Christianity because I'm Jewish and my kids are half Christian. I had to learn all about that. That was like a huge education. I didn't know anything about that, right? And we're learning about that, and I have to open myself about that, right? Because I'm not comfortable with it, but that's half of who the kids are. So, sorry about that. Thank you.
I got to admit, somebody said something that triggered me. I will definitely say that. And what triggered me was saying that we are sexualizing our children. We are not sexualizing our children. We are giving them the tools to understand their body and to understand what their fellow peers are going through. It's not easy to come out and say, I don't feel right as a boy. Hey, Dad, I don't like sports. I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't feel comfortable with that. I feel more comfortable in a dress. Yeah, as a dad, as a person who identifies as a male, that was a shock. Your firstborn son is now your second daughter. Yeah, it's a shock. What's more of a shock is having to explain to them the ridicule that they will go through in life because we as a society are not fully capable of accepting their ideology of wanting to be who they feel they are. So no, we are not sexualizing our children, we are teaching acceptance. 20 years ago, I worked in the LGBTQ community teaching safe sex education. Why? Because countless men and women, but more so men, were dying from HIV/AIDS on a consistent basis because we didn't have proper safe sex education because we were scared to admit that a man loved a man. And you know what happened? The term down low brothers came up. And African American women were contracting HIV at an alarming rate because we didn't want to educate others in the fact that it was okay for a man, no matter what his race or religion, to love another man of their choosing. That's not sexualizing, that is teaching acceptance. It's okay to come out and say, I love this person. It's okay. When we started doing that, when we started having pride, Stonewall riots, pride, making the abnormal normal, made those people feel more comfortable, and that is what successfully has helped lower the HIV/AIDS transmission rates. That safe sex education, acceptance, and knowledge. I'm a Christian man. I grew up, spent pretty much my first 14 years of my life in a Catholic school. Followed the Bible, was on my way to become a priest. Until one day that my priest told me that I just should not question what was in a piece of paper in a book that contradicted itself every 10 chapters. I still believe in God. I'm a very spiritual person. I've almost lost my life more times than I can count. But I want to make it so that my children can grow up in a place where they just feel free to say, hey, I love that person, no matter what. I had to accept it, and I looked my children in the eye when they told me, and I said, I will love you no matter what. The world may not, but I will, and you will find others that do. It's programs like this, even slightly sugar-coated and not dumbed down, but simplified a little bit, help build our children to just accept one another for who they are. And thank you for putting the care and effort into it. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Osmond.
I'm not going to address the sexual, I think it was overly stated by everybody here. What I did want to address is diversity. I had a conversation with Dr. J as well as one of our students who is a graduate, and we talked about having this visualization at a lower level. So children like you and myself that look like this color are not the only children in the classroom, so we do matter, and that's where it needs to start. We're talking about things on lower levels as far as sex when we have people in our community that are clearly divided because of the color of their skin still to this day. I do have 5 children, I have 3 children that are in this district, and I can tell you until my daughter was in middle school, she was the only, as we stated, Cocoa Puff in the milk. Okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. She was the only person of color in her classroom. So where was her identity? Who was she identifying with when she wanted to swing her hair because that's what she saw? So what we need to understand is that when we're trying to talk about diversity, it's not just about sexual beings. It's about people of color, all different races, whether you are Jewish, whether you are Catholic, whether you do not study religion at all. We need to be understood that it's okay to be different. And when these things arise and we're not looked at as individuals and we're all grouped together as one person, it's not correct. It's not how we live. Just because I live in this part of Aberdeen and you live in that part of Aberdeen, we all pay taxes. It doesn't mean that my status is different than your status. And our children are learning these things that the parents are teaching them that because of the color of their skin, they cannot play with each other. And my children, thank God, have had beautiful friends, all colors, all nations, to be able to play with them since they were in kindergarten. But a lot of children don't have that same blessing, and not just in this district and other districts as well, where they don't have diversity. They don't look at other ethnic groups as to celebrate Black History Month, things like that are important. She talked about Black Lives Matter and things like that as well. We don't have those type of inclusions, and we're learning better. And as you can see, I'm the only person of color sitting up here in the district. And my purpose is because all of our children matter, but you have to have the identity present in order for it to matter. The conversations are different in our rooms because I'm in that room. If I wasn't in the room, we wouldn't have a conversation about color. And I'm not saying that we don't have conversation about diversity, but who does it affect more than me on the board? You understand what I'm saying? So I feel like let's not just think that diversity and things include a sexual manner. It's a whole group of people that are missing out because they're not included. So we're trying to include everyone in, and everybody's getting lost in the sexual aspects of it, and it's not all about sex. So I just wanted to bring that topic up, and thank you for your time.
Shelley Bershner, I live in Aberdeen. Actually, I was not going to speak, and my daughter, I was got handsome and jumped up, and she's like, "I got this one." I'm like, "No, it's my turn." I read the policy on the state level. It was a little bit to digest, and I read our school policy. And my first reaction was, why are we screaming about this very benign document? Diversity means a lot to every one of us. And even people who are against it, I do appreciate their point of view, right? So therefore, I'm glad that the board and Dr. J took the time to just broaden the scope so we all are represented in this curriculum. I would love that I live in Mattawan because we can have this conversation, we can listen to each other, and we can discuss without hatred and without any kind of bias. We just want to be able to talk to each other and better our children and educate our children, right? So we have to keep the children forefront, right? So therefore, I live in Mattawan. I check all the boxes. I am Black, I'm white, I'm Jewish, I'm an immigrant. My kids are straight and gay. I have a male cheerleader, right? I have a jock in the ice hockey team that graduated. I check all the boxes. So diversity, I wake up diverse. I go to sleep diverse, okay? This curriculum says it and speaks to me. And even if you're against it, I love to talk to you anyway because I can bounce and exchange ideas. But I just want to say that our children, they run circles around us in terms of media, in terms of the things that they know. So if we have a conversation or just put the groundwork together where we can have a conversation where Johnny can talk about his summer experience with his two dads and not make Johnny feel bad, why not do that? Why can't we do that? What's the harm in doing that? Like make Johnny feel a part of our community. That's what we're trying to talk to you about. That's all. How did I do, Sarah?
I just want to say that it seems in today's climate, and maybe this community, other communities, we've been here for 2 years, so we've felt the community, we're on the football team, we've partaken in a lot of things, we've met a lot of people. Diversity and sexuality, in my opinion, when it comes to my children, they are together, but they are also extremely separate. My kids know about diversity. I'm half Jewish, half Christian. I'm also an atheist. I come from Russia. I'm an immigrant. My parents came with nothing. I understand about diversity. But sexualizing our children and diversity, in my opinion, are two different things. I choose how I speak to my children. I choose what I tell them is appropriate in my opinion, and it is not. I also tell my children they have to accept everyone, be kind to everyone. If tomorrow my child comes home and says, I am this, I will love them to death forever. But I don't want to confuse telling children that men can get pregnant and have children when biologically and scientifically, someone please prove me wrong, that is not possible. So when questions about pronouns come up, when questions about sexual education in the 2nd grade come up or earlier, it doesn't mean that some of us, and I understand a lot of us looks like are divided, which is okay, we're all entitled to our own opinion. But some of us do not find it appropriate, it is not to our beliefs, and we want to address it at home. It doesn't mean that if we don't want it taught in schools, that we tell our kids, don't like the transgender kid, don't like the gay kid, don't like the Black kid. Absolutely not, that's not what it means. But I do not feel comfortable having my son share a bathroom with anyone other than a boy, and I do not feel comfortable if someone tells my son, you could be a she or you could be a he. He can, and that's fine, but that's a conversation that I think should be at home with our family. So I just want to make it clear that sexualization of children, sexual topics, and diversity, they are intertwined, but there is a very big difference, and I'm only coming from the standpoint of a mom to 7-year-old boys. They don't know the proper terms for a lot of things. We will teach them when we feel it's appropriate, but school is not the place for some of these things. And I do want to say, I appreciate that gentleman said you jumped around the wording. You guys took a different approach from other districts, which have went full-blown with the entire legislative proposal with absolutely no flexibility. I appreciate that as a parent coming into your district, but I just want to make it aware, just because we don't agree, it doesn't mean that we don't think we should be teaching our kids kindness and acceptance. Kindness and acceptance is here. Sexualization of our children and inappropriate topics at 7 years old, to me, are two different things. Just a statement, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, yes, Mr. Burrow.
Casey Burrow, I live in Farmingdale. I'm the president of the Manawan Evergreen Regional Education Association. So I thought this was a good conversation for the most part. Just a couple of things from the teaching standpoint. As I'm sitting and listening, I'm hearing sexuality, but I'm not hearing gender identification. And I think we're really talking about two different things. And my understanding of these standards is that they're more related to gender identification than they are related to sexuality in the sense that you would think about sexuality.
Yes.
Okay. With that being said, I do agree that there does need to be, and I know we have guidance counselors that come into our classrooms and teach lessons. These issues are going to present themselves, whether they occur this year, next year, whatever it may be. Teachers will need to be taught on how to delicately handle these. Now, I cannot speak for every teacher. I can speak for the teachers that I know, and I can tell you now that I've never really heard any of them in front of their students express their own personal opinion or viewpoint. And an example I would give you of that is that when I was a homeroom teacher, we would teach about Columbus. But then we would also teach from a different viewpoint. It's a picture book called Encounter by Janie Yolen, and it tells the story of a Taino boy from his viewpoint when the Europeans came over. And then what you do is you let children discuss and make up their minds. So it's our job to present information to them, let them then make the decisions. It should never be our opinion. And yeah, it will take some getting used to. I can tell you right now personally that the word they to me means more than one. It is going to take an adjustment for me to get used to saying that, because my entire life I've never used the word in that context. But I'm open-minded and absolutely willing, and so is the staff that I work with, we're all absolutely willing to do that. And the other thing is, when we talk about like bathrooms and things of that nature, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of this stuff that we're talking about is state statute driven. So the unisex bathroom, if a student identifies, for example, as female, but is born male, that person can actually participate on the female team. That's related to what state statute is. That's not the school district saying that. They have to abide by that. The unisex bathrooms, yes, that happens. I know in my own school, we've used the nurse's office for children that have had not identity issues, but just bathroom issues. You can go to the nurse's office. Like, we try to accommodate kids, and we want all kids to be welcome, and we want them all to be treated kindly and fairly. So, you know, it's a task that the staff is absolutely willing to take up. But as I said, I think we do need to have some conversations with staff on how to handle things, because there will be scenarios where, you know, a boy says that, you know, my two dads, we went on vacation, and there's going to be some child in that classroom that says, you have two dads? Well, how is that conversation going to be handled? Now, most teachers are going to be open-minded. They go, yeah, of course they can. Well, how can that be? And maybe you talk about adoption, talk about things like that, and you keep it at that appropriate age level. So, like I said, I think a little bit of information for the staff can go a long way, just because as these things get presented. But overall, like I said, I thought this was a good conversation, and I really think you guys did do a great job with trying to tailor it to the community, as opposed to just pushing forward and saying, we're just going to do whatever the state wants. So, kudos to you.
Anyone else? If not, we're going to take a 5-minute break before we move on to...
Oh, you got one.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry.
Amy, Chestnut Drive. I do agree that I just feel like it is a little age inappropriate. I think 10 years old. I'm just talking about the sex ed. I feel like 10 years old is a little bit too young to be learning some of this stuff. And so it's concerning to me, because I have a 6-year-old at home, and a first grader. What are they teaching in first grade? Are they teaching any of this?
These are like we said, there's a grade span. We've chosen to go the furthest with it.
Okay, so they're not teaching any.
Second grade is what we went over, those things. But you have access to the curriculum. Okay. You can go on and look at first grade, but what Mike and I were speaking to tonight, Those things are being taught in second
So
grade,
it's all being pushed out later.
pushed to the furthest extent it can.
Yeah, I'm like a little bit more old school where like I grew up and we learned this stuff in high school, you know what I mean? So, and I understand kids are learning a little bit more, but it's, you gotta monitor kids at home too a little.
We are, and like we said too, this is all age appropriate. We're not getting into the specifics of procreation in second grade, just what we spoke to tonight.
I still feel like 10 years old is a little.
Understood.
So, I mean, so everybody's view is different.
Absolutely.
And you got to remember, you have people who are like Jehovah's Witness, and there's some other kids can't even watch Disney movies, so that might be a little shocking. So when we're talking about, like, you know, everybody, we have to remember everybody and not to force anybody's views on anybody else. Everybody should just respect each other, that's it. And accept each other's views, even if they're much different than mine or yours. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
We're just going to take a quick 5-minute break and then we'll get on and move on to the agenda. So we are going to restart. So that brings us to Board President's report. Thank you everyone for a very good discussion. So hard to believe, but September 6th is almost here. It's only about 2 weeks away, or is 2 weeks away. Just to make you aware of a few things, the district has implemented a new student information system called Genesis. It's going to replace real time. I know Dr. Mike has sent out a letter, actually another correspondence went out tonight. On August 23rd, it will open with limited access for the parents, and then on August 30th, it will fully access with documents that need e-signatures, that's when the teachers' assignments come out and that sort of information. Also, bus information will be available to parents roughly about the week before school. There have been a fair amount of new students registering recently within the district, and we heard from a lot of new parents to district tonight. That does impact our busing, the routes, the availability. So what we're asking is that you, even if you get your assignment the night before school starts, if you could just log back into the portal and just confirm, because sometimes the pickup time or the drop-off time will slightly change. There will also be a new food services app called School Pay that's going to be launching. That information will be coming out shortly as well. We're asking all families to complete the 22-23 free reduced meal application this year because that does impact our federal funding. And as Dr. Mike had said in his letter, meals will no longer be available free of charge this year. The federal program that covered those costs has ended. And my last reminder is to look at the district and school web pages for the back to school information. You'll find the school calendars, which has all those dates on there, orientation dates, that sort of information. And with that, just want to wish the students and the staff good luck on the first day of classes and hope everyone has a good school year. So now we're going to move to the agenda items. Curriculum, actually we're going to run through them and then go through the questions and comments from the board. Curriculum and instruction, Mr. Lehman.
Thank you for curriculum and instruction. We're asking the board to approve items A, B, 1 through 12 as listed on the agenda. Mrs. Scully, is there anybody to move on to the next section?
Sorry, yep, you can go ahead. Student services.
Moving on to student services, we're asking the board to approve items numbers 1 through 12 as listed on the agenda. Under personnel, we're going to begin with a walk-in item for action. So the board has a walk-in item. We're asking the board to approve the appointments that are listed on the walk-in item. We're asking the board to approve staff rate changes listed on the walk-in and to approve item number 3, which is the veterans pay schedule, item 3 on the walk-in. Moving to the regular agenda under personnel, we're asking the board to approve items A, B, C, 1 through 16, D, 1 through 11. In this case, there's a couple of items I'd like to read into the minutes under personnel. Beginning on page 1 of 9 under B, leave of absences, staff member Tracy Finns, where it says personal leave without pay, the date should be 1/17/2023 rather than 16, there's a holiday, so it's 1/17. On the next page, page 2 of 9 under section C, appointments, new hires, and we're about halfway down. Kathleen Schaefer, social worker replacement position, the step should be F1, F as in Frank, F1. The salary as listed is correct. And then moving down, 3 more staff members. Tamara Shalaby, special ed teacher at the middle school. We have to change the start date from September 1st to October 24th as the staff member is not being released from his current district. And then finally, moving on to policy, we're asking the board to approve the second read of policy 2415.50. That is second read and adoption of policy. That concludes curriculum instruction, student services, personnel, and policy.
Thank you. Can I get a motion and a second to approve all those items?
So moved.
I'll second. Okay. Any questions or comments from the board on curriculum and instruction, student services, personnel, or policy?
I have a quick question.
Yes,
I know you went through it kind of briefly. Which teacher or instructor you just stated from the dates? The date change?
So we're on page 2 of 9. It's under C appointments. It's a third one up from the bottom. Shalaby, S-H-A-L-A-B-Y is the last name.
Okay.
His start date is October 24th.
Okay, and so, yeah, so my question to you, being that that's a middle school special education teacher, do you have someone in place that's going to be a help? So it's a smooth transition for the children?
Yes, we have several new hires who are not being used by their district. And so in some cases, it's being covered by current district staff. In other cases, we have substitute teachers available.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. We're going to move to finance, Ms. Case.
We'll be asking the board to take motion on items 1 through 21.
Can I get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments from the board? Okay. So then the next item up is executive session. Okay. Oh, sorry. Unfinished business first. Yes.
I was just going to say, can you just briefly touch on why we have the calendar back on here? I know people don't.
Oh, sure.
read it,
So
so
this-
just do.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mike, can you explain the give back, please, on the calendar? Is that what we're voting on?
The MAM's back to school night changed, so that'll reflect it. It'll be up tomorrow on the district website. That's pretty much the change, yeah.
All right, so we're going to vote on agenda items for curriculum and instruction, special student services, policy, personnel, and finance.
Mr. Ahern?
Yes.
Ms. Biles?
Yes.
Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Montone?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes, although I abstain on personnel agenda number 8.
Understood. Ms. Osborne?
Yes, abstain from travel ed.
Understood. Mrs. Sully?
Yes. So jumping back to unfinished business, any board members? Any new business? Ms. Friedman?
I just want to say that although a touchy subject, I really thought the conversation that was started tonight was hugely important. I'm hoping that's a step forward for not just our district, for our kids and for our community as a whole, because that is, I watched it happen at the equity presentation on a much smaller level that involved the children. So it is very healthy to see that the adults are also able to talk and hear and understand and accept different opinions. It's something that if we can encourage as a district for the parents, I think we should try and think creatively to find a way to do that.
Thank you.
I also want to talk about a topic. We had a meeting last week, I believe it was, junior ROTC program coming to our district. We're, I would say, keeping our prayers tight. It'll be a blessing to have it here in our district. And what I loved about the recruiter and what he explained to us is that it's not recruiting the children to be in the military. The ROTC program comes with a lot of discipline and training, which I feel like a lot of our children could use. with a lot of things going on, and just keeps them focused. And I think the focus needs to be there with people being home for 2 years in COVID, a lot of antsy in the seats, as you may. But what he also described was that we have children who are autistic, disabled, blind, hearing impaired that are also a part of the program. You don't have to be perfect to be a part of the program, which is a blessing, because a lot of children do want to participate in these programs, and because they're not inclined, whether it's physically or mentally, that they feel like they can't participate or belong, and this program will allow all students to belong and participate, male, females, and any of the children who identify, however they identify, they'll be able to participate in this program. Thank you.
Just to follow up on this, Osborne, I will say also, what I found most impressive was just that he went out of his way to emphasize that it is not a recruitment, and you're talking to someone who enlisted in the Marine Corps in high school. I was very happy to hear that it isn't that. And, you know, we've been talking about equity all night, and we didn't have to coax that out of him. That flowed, excuse me. So you know that's what he preaches. So it was great to hear, and I'm optimistic. We did a good job, I think, and I'm hopeful that come January it'll start.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to executive session. Be it resolved that a closed session be convened for the purpose of discussing privacy, personnel, and attorney-client matters. The subject matter of these discussions will be disclosed to the public when the reason for confidentiality subsides. Although the board cannot guarantee it, the length of the executive session is estimated to be 40 minutes, after which the public meeting of the board shall reconvene and proceed with business. Action will not take place. Can I get a motion and a second to enter exec session? All in favor? Aye.